Well, hey guys, and welcome to Community Group Week. So before we get started today, I want to share a bit of a story. This summer, I had a very dichotomous couple days. So some of you know, Ash and I and our family, we got to spend a couple weeks this summer down in Guatemala, which was amazing. And so pretty much is my routine. I will wake up in the morning and I would go running. And as I was running past and sometimes with and by a lot of people that were struggling. As the world would see it, they were struggling economically, they were struggling with opportunity, they were struggling with access to different health needs and education needs, and in many ways were experiencing the results of years of systemic wealth inequality and racism and injustice. And then a couple days, we spent those weeks in Guatemala, and then we flew back to the Midwest, and we were with some family for a couple days. And I was running again one morning, just a few days after leaving Guatemala. And I was running in a neighborhood that near where one of our families live. And it was just this like incredibly nice, fancy neighborhood. All these, they're like what we call McMansions, just everything is very well groomed, and multiple cars in every driveway. These folks were at the very opposite end of the spectrum. Just things had gone well. They were the result of privilege and all the systems working on their behalf. And as I was running, especially in the Midwest, after just experience being so long, spending time running and being with the folks in Guatemala, I had these thoughts of like, are these folks that now I'm running past these McMansions, are they better off than the people that I just spent time with in Guatemala? Like, are they happier? Are their families healthier? Is everything about their lives better? Because that's what we normally believe, is that if you want to make your life better, if you want to make your life happier, then you just have to get the bigger house, the better job, the more car, and of course you will be happier. And is that true? Are the people that live in suburban cul-de-sac McMansions, is their life better? Are they more, our word for the last week and this week, is their life more blessed because they have more stuff, because they have more opportunity than folks that live in other parts of the world? And it's a good question. And there's lots of different ways that we can take it. And so today we're going to discuss the idea of what it looks like to live blessed. And especially what I would love for you to focus on is, what are the choices we have available to us as Jesus followers? What is the thing that Jesus is inviting us into? If you find yourself in a circumstance where maybe like the folks in Guatemala, things have not gone well, where the way in which your life is ending up right now is the result of maybe some decisions that you made, and maybe decisions that were made completely out of your control, but things might be considered to be a little bit more difficult. Well, what choices do we have? What is Jesus inviting us into to potentially live a blessed life? And what even does that mean? And if we're in the position where like things are just going well, like we're making more money than we could have ever imagined, like we have a job, a career that's taking off more than we ever could have dreamed, our family is healthy, if we are really living in a place of prosperity, what does that look like? And what is Jesus inviting us into and asking us to live a blessed life? So just a little bit maybe to get your gears working. So as you guys jump in today, a couple different tools before you go into your questions. So in the comments, if you're looking in the YouTube video, you can find all the questions for today. You can check the weekly email, and all the questions are in there for today. Lots of different things I would love for you to discuss. But as you guys get ready to start discussing these questions, first, make sure you take some time. You are hopefully gathered with a group of people today that love you, that are invested in you, and that you are invested and that you love. And so take some time to share with each other how are you doing? What's been going good in your life? What's been stressful in your life? And if you were with us this past Sunday, as we talked about this idea of blessed, how has that gone? Have you practiced giving gratitude? We talked about that when we were together in our live service. We talked about maybe seeing the things that we have and blessing other people. Have you made any traction on that? Have you kind of tried to live that out in any other way? So spend some time and talk about how you guys are doing. And then I want you to watch and read a couple different things. So first, we're going to watch a video that's right after this, tagged on into this video from the Bible Project, that gives a good biblical kind of wide view of what this idea of blessing and curse looks like. And then if you have kids in the group, or even if you don't have kids in the group, the Jesus Storybook Bible does such a good job of putting the Bible through the Jesus lens, which is how we all want to read the Bible. And so page 128, it's called The Story of the Singer. It's the Jesus Storybook's kind of rendition of the Sermon on the Mount. And so I would encourage you to take some time to have someone in your group read that slowly to everybody in your group. And then after that, have someone read Luke chapter 6 and read the parts of the Sermon on the Mount through there. And as you read through the Jesus Storybook Bible, and as you read through Luke 6, I'm going to encourage you again to read it slow and really take some time as you're listening. You can close your eyes if you want to in your group and really try to picture, what did this look like? Try to picture the hill outside. Try to picture the people that were there. Many people that would have been considered to be poor and sick, and who the system had not worked well for them, who felt like the boot of the empire was on their neck. I try to picture them listening to Jesus, and what would they have thought? Well, what would have been going through their heads? And then take some time to go through all the questions that are in the link on the YouTube video or in our weekly email. And then hopefully you guys will get to end. This is how we want to end all of our community groups. Really thinking about that I will thing. Because I think that there's something with whatever circumstance you find yourself in, Jesus is inviting us into what he considers to be a blessed life. And so we have a choice, every single one of us, is if we want to accept that invitation. And so what does that look like? What will you do with that in the next couple days, the next week? Make sure you spend some time talking about that, and then when you guys get together next, you can help keep each other accountable to living this blessed life. So enjoy group today, and excited for you guys to talk about this idea, and then for us together to live this idea of what it looks like to be blessed. Bye.
The story of the Bible begins with God bringing life out of darkness, ordering our beautiful world, and then blessing all of its creatures.
Hold on, blessing. That's one of those funny religious words.
Yeah, right. People say a blessing over their meal or after they sneeze.
Or just a general way to say that things are going well for me.
But in the Bible, a blessing is more specific. The first blessing in the Bible is when God creates animals, and he blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the land."
So God's blessing is about flourishing and multiplication of life.
Right, it's when God shares his life-producing ability with others. Next, God gives humans an additional blessing that sets them apart from the animals. Not only are we one of God's creatures that can generate new life, we've also been appointed as God's representative image to rule and oversee this whole flourishing world on God's behalf.
So part of our blessing is to take care of God's blessing for all creation.
And God wants us to rule while trusting in his abundance, to eat from the tree of blessing, that is, the tree of God's own eternal life.
Now there is another tree to eat from.
Yes, and it represents this decision to try and seize abundance and life on our own terms by our own wisdom.
The humans encounter a deceptive creature who tricks them into eating from this other tree, thinking it's a shortcut to blessing.
And instead of blessing, this tree brings a curse.
A curse? You mean like a magic spell?
No, in the Bible, the curse is when God hands people over to the consequences of seizing our own blessing on our own terms. It's a curse because instead of abundance and life, we end up with scarcity, isolation, and death. So God curses the ground, and instead of fruitfulness, there will be famine. Instead of overseeing the world, they will have to work the land until they die.
Man.
But God also curses that deceptive creature that fooled the humans, saying that a human will come one day to destroy it. and that human will be born into a world of scarcity where men and women and families and tribes are all locked in violent conflict.
If God's blessing is now covered with a curse, how can we flourish? Even more, how can we rule with God?
Well, here the biblical story takes an interesting turn. God chooses one couple, Abraham and Sarah, and God blesses them and says they will become a huge family.
Be fruitful and multiply.
And there's more. God says that his blessing on Abraham and his family is for this larger purpose, so that through them, God's blessing can go out to all of the nations.
So God's plan is to reverse the curse and restore the blessing by first blessing this one family.
Right. And this family does experience God's blessing. Even when they journey through times of danger and scarcity, they grow into this huge nation, Israel.
And God brings them to a mountain and invites them to be his representatives.
Yes, God will bless Israel so that they can become a blessing to the nations. All they have to do is trust and live by God's wisdom. And they're told that this is a choice between life and death, between blessing and curse.
Now keep reading, because the Israelites almost never trust God for his blessing. Their story is filled with tales of deception, violent grabs for power, resulting in the ultimate curse: exile from their land and slavery to foreign nations.
But Israel's prophets, who lived through all of this, they still trusted in God's promise to Abraham. And they anticipated a future Israelite who would come to restore God's blessing and reverse the curse for Israel and for all the nations.
When we turn to the story of Jesus, we find Israel still experiencing the curse, living as slaves to the Roman Empire.
But Jesus, he so trusted in God's blessing. He claimed that it was arriving in a new way through himself.
He wanted his followers to trust in God's abundance, to share and be generous.
And he even taught his followers to bless people who curse them. Jesus would even reverse the curse by healing and restoring people's bodies.
God's blessing is being unleashed.
Jesus also confronted his fellow Israelites who were in power, and he accused them of getting in the way of God's plan to bless Israel and the nations through them.
Those leaders arrest Jesus so they could have him killed.
And instead of fighting back, Jesus believed that he was that chosen Israelite who would face the curse that Israel and all humanity deserves, and he would allow the curse to fall on him.
Jesus dies the shameful death of a man under the curse.
But just as God brought life and blessing out of darkness in the beginning, so here, through Jesus, God reverses death by raising Jesus. The curse is put to death, so that the blessing of God's life can spread out once again.
After his resurrection, Jesus blessed his followers, and he said that his presence would be with them as they learn to trust in God's blessing and share with others.
And while death and the curse still have a hold on our world, followers of Jesus trust that the power of God's blessing is even stronger.
It means we can live with extreme generosity, even when it seems like there's not enough.
And that leads us to the conclusion of the biblical story, where every nation is enjoying the gifts of God's abundance, because in God's new world that is sustained by the life-giving power of Jesus, there is no longer any curse.